Now the restore transact SQL statement, rather than input it, because there's about 7 million possibilities on using this, and it's very straightforward, I want to just show it to you in the documentation and point out a couple of things here. I think it'd be the easiest thing to do. Notice that this restores backups taken using the backup command. Now notice what you can do with this. You can restore an entire database from a full backup. That's the easy one. You can restore part of a database or an individual file if you've backed up those. Okay. Notice you can restore a transaction log onto a database using transaction log restore. And you can revert a database to a point in time captured by a database snapshot. Now, notice the syntax here. We start right here, and all of this is syntax for the restore database statement. Now, notice there's a couple. You can tell it to restore and stop on an error. You can tell it to restore and do checksums. Notice that you can restore, and this is one that you may see, you can move a file. So I may have backed up a database on one server and I want to move it to another one. I can use the move command to do that. Notice here's where I set my recovery, no recovery, and standby, which we'll talk about later. The interesting ones down here is stop at. Now with stop at, we can set a date and a time for when we'll stop at. Now this is an example of when we lose a database and users report that it started acting kind of funky around, say, 1:30. Well, we can assume that we were either attacked or something happened that kind of corrupted the database, and so we will do a stop at, say, 1:20 and restore to 1:20, and then we'll only lose 10 minutes worth of data. And so that's how we can use stop at. We can also set marks in the database, and we can say stop at mark. Notice we can use unload and no unload for tapes to restore and then unload the tape. Then notice we can restore part of a database on a partial restore. And then notice down here to restore specific files, file groups, or pages. And then the big one down here to restore transaction logs. You see how to restore transaction logs, individual logs. Now when you get into the arguments down here, you can see there's actually a link to restore arguments. And there's a lot of arguments in this restore command. Again, I would strongly suggest, I don't mean to be copping out on you here, but I would strongly suggest that you simply print all of this out and read over it, because there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts that can happen in restores. You don't want to learn this in the heat of battle when 100 people are yelling at you about when's the database going to be back up and reminding you how much it costs the company per hour for the database to be down. So go through this, play with this and test environments, really familiarize yourself with the various piece parts of this restore syntax. Make sure that you've got what you need and you're ready to go. But do this in a test lab, and restoring can be problematic at times if you have corrupted databases and so forth. So just make sure that you kind of put yourself through the paces and get used to the restore process.